Politics jokes, English amazing story. 1. It is so cold outside I saw a politician with his hands in his own pockets. 2. I asked my North Korean friend how it was to live in North Korea. He said he can't complain. 3. One state official to the other, I don't know what people have against us, we haven't done anything. 4. Late one night a robber wearing a mask stopped a well-dressed man and stuck a gun in his ribs. Give me your money, he demanded. Scandalized, the man replied, You can't do this, I'm a politician. Oh. In that case, smiled the robber, give me my money. 5. A politician is standing in a long line at the box office. Suddenly, he feels a pair of hands kneading his shoulders, back, and neck. The lawyer turns around. What the hell do you think you're doing? I'm a chiropractor, and I'm just keeping in practice while I'm waiting in line. Well, I'm a politician, but you don't see me stealing the guy in front of me, do you? 6. Question: How many politicians does it take to change a light bulb? A. 2. One to change it and another one to change it back again. 7. Politicians and diapers have one thing in common, they should both be changed regularly, and for the same reason. 8. If con is the opposite of pro, then is Congress the opposite of progress? 9. Question: What's the difference between a politician and a snail? A. One is slimy, a pest, and leaves a trail everywhere, and the other is a snail. 10. A little boy goes to his dad and asks, What is politics? Dad says, Well son, let me try to explain it this way, I'm the breadwinner of the family, so let's call me capitalism. Your mom, she's the administrator of the money, so we'll call her the government. We're here to take care of your needs, so we'll call you the people. The nanny, we'll consider her the working class. And your baby brother, we'll call him the future. Now, think about that and see if that makes sense. So the little boy goes off to bed thinking about what Dad had said. Later that night, he hears his baby brother crying, so he gets up to check on him. He finds that the baby has severely soiled his diaper. So the little boy goes to his parents' room and finds his mother sound asleep. Not wanting to wake her, he goes to the nanny's room. Finding the door locked, he peeks in the keyhole and sees his father in bed with the nanny. He gives up and goes back to bed. The next morning, the little boy says to his father, Dad, I think I understand the concept of politics now. The father says, Good son, tell me in your own words what you think politics is all about. The little boy replies, Well, while capitalism is screwing the working class, the government is sound asleep, the people are being ignored, and the future is in deep poo. 11. Cows and politics explained. A Christian Democrat, you have 2 cows. You keep one and give one to your neighbor. A socialist, you have 2 cows. The government takes one and gives it to your neighbor. An American Republican, you have 2 cows. Your neighbor has none. So what? An American Democrat, you have 2 cows. Your neighbor has none. You feel guilty for being successful. You vote people into office who tax your cows, forcing you to sell one to raise money to pay the tax. The people you voted for then take the tax money and buy a cow and give it to your neighbor. You feel righteous. A communist, you have 2 cows. The government seizes both and provides you with milk. A fascist, you have 2 cows. The government seizes both and sells you the milk. You join the underground and start a campaign of sabotage. Democracy, American style, you have 2 cows. The government taxes you to the point you have to sell both to support a man in a foreign country who has only 1 cow, which was a gift from your government. Capitalism, American style, you have 2 cows. You sell one, buy a bull, and build a herd of cows. Bureaucracy, American style, you have 2 cows. The government takes them both, shoots one, milks the other, pays you for the milk, then pours the milk down the drain. An American corporation, you have 2 cows. You sell one, and force the other to produce the milk of 4 cows. You are surprised when the cow drops dead. A French corporation, you have 2 cows. You go on strike because you want 3 cows. A Japanese corporation, you have 2 cows. You redesign them so they are 1/10 the size of an ordinary cow and produce 20 times the milk. You then create clever cow cartoon images called Cowcomen and market them worldwide. A German corporation, you have 2 cows. You re-engineer them so they live for 100 years, eat once a month, and milk themselves. A British corporation, you have 2 cows. They are mad. They die. Pass the shepherd's pie, please. An Italian corporation, you have 2 cows, but you don't know where they are. You break for lunch. A Russian corporation, you have 2 cows. You count them and learn you have 5 cows. You count them again and learn you have 42 cows. You count them again and learn you have 12 cows. You stop counting cows and open another bottle of vodka. A Swiss corporation, you have 5,000 cows, none of which belong to you. You charge others for storing them. A Brazilian corporation, you have 2 cows. You enter into a partnership with an American corporation. Soon you have 1,000 cows and the American corporation declares bankruptcy. An Indian corporation, you have 2 cows. You worship both of them. A Chinese corporation, you have 2 cows. You have 300 people milking them. You claim full employment, high bovine productivity, and arrest the newsman who reported on them. An Israeli corporation, there are these 2 Jewish cows, right? They open a milk factory, an ice cream store, and then sell the movie rights. They send their calves to Harvard to become doctors. So, who needs people? An Arkansas corporation, you have 2 cows. That one on the left is kinda cute. 12 Rules of Politics. If it's worth fighting for, it's worth fighting dirty for. Don't lie, cheat or steal, unnecessarily. An honest answer can get you into a lot of trouble. The facts, although interesting, are irrelevant. No is only an interim response. You can't kill a bad idea. If at first you don't succeed, destroy all evidence that you ever tried. The truth is a variable. A promise is not a guarantee. If you can't counter the argument, leave the meeting. 13 Newspaper headlines in the year 2035. Ozone created by electric cars now killing millions in the 7th largest country in the world, California. White minorities still trying to have English recognized as the California's 3rd language. Spotted owl plague threatens northwestern United States crops and livestock. Baby conceived naturally. Scientist stumped. Authentic year 2000, Chad, sells at Sotheby's for $4.6 million. Last remaining fundamentalist Muslim dies in the American territory of the Middle East, formerly known as Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, and Lebanon. Iraq still closed off. Physicists estimate it will take at least 10 more years before radioactivity decreases to safe levels. Castro finally dies at age 112. Cuban cigars can now be imported legally, but President Chelsea Clinton has banned all smoking. George Z. Bush says he will run for president in 2036. 35-year study, diet and exercise is the key to weight loss. Texas executes last remaining citizen. Upcoming NFL draft likely to focus on use of mutants. Average height of NBA players now 9 feet, 7 inches. Microsoft announces it has perfected its newest version of Windows so it crashes before installation is completed. New federal law requires that all nail clippers, screwdrivers and baseball bats must be registered by January 2036. 14. Question: what do you call a lawyer with an IQ of 100? A. Your Honor. Question: what do you call a lawyer with an IQ of 50? A. Senator. 15. Politician was a guest speaker at the golf club dinner. As the politician stood up to speak, a few of the men saw it as an opportunity to sneak off to the bar. An hour later, with the politician still talking, another man joined them. Is he still talking? They asked him. Yes, another man answered. What on earth is he talking about? I don't know. He's still introducing himself. 16. A bus full of politicians was moving along the country road. Then it crashed into the tree and overturned. Blood and glass were everywhere. A middle-aged farmer working on the field nearby saw the accident and decided to help. He dug a huge hole and buried all the politicians who were still alive. He thought he did his country a good service. 17. A priest went into a Washington, D.C., barber shop, got his hair cut and asked how much he owed. "No charge, Father," the barber said. "I consider it a service to the Lord." When the barber arrived at his shop the next morning, he found a dozen small prayer booklets on the stoop along with a thank you note from the priest. A few days later a police officer came in. "How much do I owe you?" the cop asked after his haircut. "No charge, officer," the barber answered. "I consider it a service to my community." The next morning the barber found a dozen donuts on the stoop along with a thank you note from the police officer. A few days after that, a senator walked in for a haircut. "How much do I owe you?" he asked afterward. "No charge," the barber replied. "I consider it a service to my country." The next morning when he arrived at the shop, the barber found a dozen senators waiting on the stoop. 18. A little girl asked her father, "Daddy, do all fairy tales begin with once upon a time?" And he replied, "No, there is a whole series of fairy tales that begin with, if elected I promise." 19. One day 3 men were walking across this bridge, an American, a Canadian, and a Frenchie. When they got to the middle of the bridge, the Frenchie stopped, pulled a bottle of wine out of his pack, and threw it over the bridge. The Canadian and the American both yelled out, "What the hell did you do that for?" The Frenchie just shrugged and said, "We've got too much of that in our country." The American, catching the Frenchie's drift, pulled out a pack of cigarettes and threw them over the bridge. The Canadian and the Frenchie both yelled out, "What the hell did you do that for?" The American shrugged and said, "We have too many of those in our country." Now, the Canadian thought for a long time, and finally, he picked up the Frenchie and threw him into the water. The American looked at him in disbelief and said, "Why in God's name did you do that?" And the Canadian replied, "We've got too many of those in our country." 20. A bus filled with politicians was driving through the countryside one day, on the campaign trail. The bus driver, caught up in the beautiful scenery, loses control and crashes into the ditch. A farmer living nearby hears the horrible crash and rushes out to discover the wreckage. Finding the politicians, he buries them. The next day, the police come to the farm to question the man. "So you buried all the politicians?" asked the police officer. "Were they all dead?" The farmer answered, "Some said they weren't, but you know how politicians lie." 21. An ugly fat woman, a gorgeous young hot blonde, an American man and a Canadian man are all riding together in a train car. As the train passes through a tunnel, the distinctive sound of a loud slap is heard. When they emerge from the tunnel, a bright red handprint is on the face of the American. The fat woman thinks that dirty American grabbed that blonde in the tunnel and she slapped him. The blonde thinks that dirty American must have tried to grab me, but grabbed the fatso by mistake and she slapped him. The American thinks that Canadian bastard felt up that blonde and she slapped me by mistake. The Canadian thinks, I can't wait till we go through another tunnel so I can slap that stupid American again. 22. A teacher was teaching her second grade class about the government, so for homework that one day, she told her students to ask their parents what the government is. When little Johnny got home that day, he went up to his dad and asked what the government was. His dad thought for a while and answered, "Look at it this way, I'm the president, your mom is Congress. Your maid is the workforce, you are the people and your baby brother is the future." "I still don't get it," responded the little Johnny. "Why don't you sleep on it then? Maybe you'll understand it better," said the dad. "Okay then, good night," said little Johnny went off to bed. In the middle of the night, little Johnny was awakened by his baby brother's crying. He went to his baby brother's crib and found that his baby brother had taken a crap in his diaper. So little Johnny went to his parents' room to get help. When he got to his parents' bedroom, he looked through the keyhole to check if his parents were asleep. Through the keyhole he saw his mom loudly snoring, but his dad wasn't there. So he went to the maid's room. When he looked through the maid's room keyhole, he saw his dad having sex with his maid. Little Johnny was surprised, but then he just realized something and thinks aloud, "Oh, now I understand the government. The president is screwing the workforce, Congress is fast asleep. Nobody cares about the people, and the future is full of S***T. 23, a political man to a woman, "You look beautiful today." The woman replied, "Thanks, but unfortunately I could not say the same about you." "Sure you could," said the political man, "if you could lie as well as I do." 24. Hillary Clinton goes to her doctor for a physical, only to find out that she's pregnant. She is furious. Here just became the senator of New York and this has happened to her. She gets Bill on the phone and immediately starts screaming, "How could you have let this happen? With all that's going on right now, you go and get me pregnant. How could you? I can't believe this. I just found out I am 5 weeks pregnant and it is all your fault." "Your fault? Well, what have you got to say?" There is nothing but dead silence on the phone. She screams again, "Did you hear me?" Finally she hears Bill's very, very quiet voice. In a barely audible whisper, he says, "Who is this?" 25. Indian chief 2 Eagles was asked by a white government official, "You have observed the white man for 90 years. You've seen his wars and his technological advances. You've seen his progress, and the damage he's done." The chief nodded in agreement. The official continued, "Considering all these events, in your opinion, where did the white man go wrong?" The chief stared at the government official for over a minute and then calmly replied, "When white man find land, Indians running it, no taxes, no debt, plenty buffalo, plenty beaver, clean water. Women did all the work, medicine man free. Indian man spend all day hunting and fishing, all night having sex." Then the chief leaned back and smiled. Only white man dumb enough to think he could improve system like that. 26. While visiting England, George Bush is invited to tea with the Queen. He asks her what her leadership philosophy is. She says that it is to surround herself with intelligent people. Bush asks how she knows if they're intelligent. "I ask them a riddle," says the Queen. "Allow me to demonstrate." Bush watches as the Queen summons Tony Blair and asks, "Prime Minister, please answer this question. Your mother has a child, and your father has a child, and this child is not your brother or sister. Who is it?" Tony Blair responds, "I imagine it's me, ma'am." "Correct. Thank you and goodbye, sir," says the Queen. Bush is very impressed, so, upon returning to Washington, he decides to test his own entourage. He summons Dick Cheney, and says, "Vice President, I wonder if you can answer a question for me." "Why, of course, sir. What's on your mind?" Bush poses the question, Your mother has a child, and your father has a child, and this child is not your brother or your sister. Who is it?" Cheney say, "Mr. President, can you give me 1 hour?" Bush agrees, and Cheney leaves. He immediately starts asking different people the question, but nobody can come up with an answer. Finally, with about 5 minutes left on the clock, Cheney, having lost all hope, goes to the bathroom, where he spots Colin Powell's shoes under the door of one of the stalls. "Powell, you gotta help me. President gave me this riddle. Your mother has a child, and your father has a child, and this child is not your brother or your sister. Who is it?" Powell answers immediately, "It's me, of course, you dumb *****. Much relieved, Cheney rushes back to the White House, finds George Bush, and exclaims, "I know the answer, sir. It's Colin Powell." "Wrong, you dumb *****. Bush replies, "It's Tony Blair." 27. President Trump is representing the United States of America on a highly formal, impeccably planned state visit to England. At Heathrow, a 300-foot-long red carpet is stretched out to Air Force One, and Mr. Bush strides to a warm but dignified handshake from Queen Elizabeth II. They ride in a silver 1934 Bentley limousine to the edge of central London, where they board an open 17th-century coach hitched to 6 magnificent matching white horses. As they ride toward Buckingham Palace, each looking sideways and waving to the thousands of cheering Britons lining the streets, all is going well. But suddenly the right rear horse lets fly with the most horrendous, earth-rending, ice-smarting blast of gastronomic flatulence ever heard in the British Empire, including Bermuda, Tortola, and the Falkland Islands. It shakes the coach. Uncomfortable, but under control, the two dignitaries of state do their best to ignore the whole incident, but then the Queen decides that's ridiculous. She turns to Mr. Bush and explains, "Mr. President, please accept my regrets. I'm sure you understand that there are some things that even a queen cannot control." George W. Bush, ever the gentleman, replies, "Your Majesty, please don't give the matter another thought. You know, if you hadn't said something I would have thought it was one of the horses." 28. George Bush told me he's thinking of running again. I said, "George, the Constitution prohibits you from running for a third term." He said, "Wow, they put my name in the Constitution." 1421 Bush got a coded message from Saddam. It read, 370 HSSV 0773H. Bush was stumped and sent for the CIA. The CIA was stumped too, so it went to the NSA. The NSA couldn't solve it either, so they asked Bill Clinton. He suggested turning the message upside down. 29. Very upset after having lost the re-election, the Prime Minister decides to go on a trip around the world to put it behind him. A chap comes up to the Bobby standing guard at the door of 10 Downing Street and asks him to see the Prime Minister. The policeman politely informs him that his lordship has lost the election and has left the country. The chap is back the next day, with the same request. The policeman not so politely tells him again that the Prime Minister is away and won't be back in the near future. But the fellow is back again the next day. Positively miffed, the officer reminds him that this is the third time he tells him the Prime Minister has lost the election and will be out of the country indefinitely. Then the man explains, "Yes, I know, but I love to hear you say it."